Good Monday afternoon, everybody. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center right now, coming on the air because we have multiple severe thunderstorm warnings here, focusing on South Georgia, or really South Central Georgia is where the action is. We have a lot of the parameters coming together here. I know yesterday's risk was pretty similar toward our area, but we didn't get too much, as we were looking. Only one severe thunderstorm warning during the course of the day yesterday across our area. We had some flash flood warnings in the overnight toward our northern areas there, like Lee County, Georgia. But now I see it, everything kind of built up there in toward the atmosphere in terms of what was going on there with the energy factor and the like, and we're just seeing explosive development here of thunderstorms. So severe thunderstorm warnings in play. A lot of these in the marginal risk. This can happen this time of year. Some of this, in toward that slight risk further north as well. But these are severe thunderstorm warnings. We have damaging wind gusts, a possibility, even a considerable damage tag now toward especially Brooks, Lanier, and Lowndes counties with the most eastern polygon here. So just gotta continue to track this situation. I know energy factor wise, you see all these higher numbers here. Some of those reds indicate over 3,000 joules per kilogram of surface-based CAPE, but severe thunderstorm warning here with this box, this one to the east. This is for considerable damage possibilities here until about 1:45. Northeastern Madison, southern Lanier, central Lowndes, and southeastern Brooks counties as we're going from the Big Bend of Florida to south central Georgia. At 12:59, a severe thunderstorm is located 7 miles west of Lake Park, moving northeast at 25 miles an hour. So 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts are a possibility there with this. I'll go ahead and kind of look at this just a little bit closer here, as we're looking here at our maps. We're talking about areas like Lake Park, but off I-75 at exit 16, Moody Air Force Base, Dasher, Naylor, I-75 at exit 5, Twin Lakes, Clayville, I-75 at exit 11, and Valdosta Airport. So again, that's kind of the storyline there right now as we're tracking things toward I-75. Some very strong winds a possibility. As we get out toward the west, we have a severe thunderstorm warning in play. I'll zoom into this here. This includes equipment area. This was issued at 12:41. One of them we posted about here. There were two that we posted about on the different platforms, and then we had two more issued, and that's when we decided to go ahead and jump in. I really saw that one to the far east started to gain strength, and thought we probably needed to cut in for that. And soon after, the warning was issued for considerable damage possibilities. But equipment, severe thunderstorm warning, including portions of Jefferson, Thomas, and Brooks, 60-mile-an-hour gusts to 130. We have a warning further north here that includes the Grady, Mitchell, Thomas, Brooks, and Colquitt County area, 60-mile-an-hour gust to 130. That's the northern polygon here, and the southern polygon recently issued here for areas including Thomasville, east central Grady, Thomas County, northwestern Brooks, and southwestern Colquitt until 1:45. 60-mile-an-hour wind gust here, a possibility. Cairo there, Thomasville, Boston, Ocklawaha, Coolidge, Barfoot, as well as getting over toward Thomasville Airport there. Not just Barwick, but Thomasville Airport. You have Grady County Airport, Dillon, Easton there, Oaklawn, Merrillville, Chastain, Dollinsville, Princess Steel, Pine Park, and Hollis. So that's a warning for 60-mile-an-hour wind gust to 130. Got a lot of lightning with these as well. And we just got another warning now coming on out. So let me go ahead and look at that. It's now for 70-mile-an-hour winds. It's getting further out all the way toward I-75 with this. We're talking about south central Cook County, northwestern Lowndes, northeastern Thomas, and northern Brooks County there. So 71-hour wind gust, considerable damage now to 145. Hahira, Morven, Barwick, Cecil, Thomasville Airport, Barney, Dillon, Patton, Oaklawn, Merrillville, I-75 exit 29, Hollis, and Pasco. So trying to get all that out real quick there because it's just popping up like crazy. All these warnings here, seeing this wind potential just come into play very rapidly across the area. We had one rogue warning in the 11 o'clock hour. I wasn't too concerned with that, but I was in McCulloch County, but these are just absolutely, getting wild here with multiple warnings. I gotta take this seriously. I know this stuff, this is how it is around here. Sometimes the things can just get going like, crazy here this time of year. You think, well, the risk was the same as yesterday, but instead everything comes into play. Yesterday, not much was coming into play here. Just an explosion of storms here as we're looking meteorologically. So I just got to take heed of all these warnings. Got to take heed of all these warnings here. Okay, I-75 right now between Clyattville, Dash, to Royce, and the strong winds on velocity. I know we're just, just getting inundated with the warnings here, but I bet the cameras are showing a wild scene there. Dangerous travel conditions there toward areas along I-75 right now. As we're looking at things in toward south central Georgia, again, just, a wild increase here in warnings. A very dangerous weather situation here this afternoon. You got to take it very, very seriously, obviously, with what's going on. I know, I don't know if it was already down, but the camera in that area is not working, so. I mean, I can go further north, it's still pretty nasty, even, as you get away from where the strongest winds are. We'll take you to this traffic camera right now. This Florida 511 perspective. This is not where we had the concentration of the worst winds on velocity, where that is. The camera isn't working, but yeah, this is a Georgia Department of Transportation camera here, watching the winds really whip there as we go ahead and continue to track things here in the weather center. We're just getting a lot of information on in. So this is what we have a lot of. This is very dangerous, folks. This is a very, very low, high signature of damaging winds. You rarely see this around here. Under 1,000 feet. It's showing the winds to 60, meaning these could be, as the Weather Service says, to 70 miles an hour. This could cause quite a few power outages here. It's an escalation, and if, we're to see much of an increase, we could get those cell phones going off for a destructive tag with winds to 80, and that'd be a situation here where it'd be a tornadic-like situation. So really got to take this very seriously. We have this area here northeast of Thomasville. This is very bad looking here. Very rare to see all this to develop this, nasty. I know this can, again, as I said, all the development can happen this time of year, rapidly. The storms can be pretty bad, but these velocities are very impressive and not in a good way here. This is a very, very nasty velocity signature. Winds at 65, almost 70 miles an hour, showing up there around State Road 122 in South Georgia here this afternoon. You got to take this very seriously. You got to take this very seriously this afternoon. Just continuing to track the situation. We're just trying to give you the very latest. Again, this is right there north of Barwick. This is a very clear signature of damage and wind concern. Gonna have, quite a few trees knocked down probably by this kind of wind. So it's that area and that area that really stand out. This area here on velocity is so low. I suspect there's quite a bit of damage ongoing in that region right now. As we kind of back that up and go forward here. Again, this is a very serious weather situation. We have 5 severe thunderstorm warnings, and the first couple didn't look all that impressive, so we said we would just post about them, out of the sequence of 5, but then all of a sudden, saw into the area Roy Pop. Didn't have a warning yet. We had another warning issued, and that warning came out. We were getting one, and we had another warning get issued. So there's a lot going on here this afternoon. You got to take this very seriously in this area here. From roughly Thomasville to about Asta, give or take. So, I mean, it's really, not all these warnings are the same, and that this right here is really bad looking, this one pocket of wind, and then really it's about this pocket of wind here. This one on equipment is showing some signs of, wind enhancement, but nothing overwhelming there. Overall compared to the others. At a gust of 55 miles an hour, the Redland station there, ambient weather station, 4 miles south-southwest of Kinderloop. in Lowndes County. So, you know, that's a sign of how bad it's up. I mean, that wasn't even near the worst of it. That's just kind of going about Austin now. So that's scary, kind of. I wouldn't be surprised if we had a gust of hurricane force in some of these white areas here on the velocity. Because even, you know, way out, you know, above where the worst of the winds are, we're seeing in the potential for 55-mile-an-hour winds. I mean, the camera's still fairly nasty looking there up toward Lowndes County. I was doing a moment ago, you know, and that's not even the worst of the winds here. So, not an ideal situation whatsoever. Even though the camera will see a little bit further to the north. This is in Lowndes County in the Georgia 511 GDOT perspective. There you see it shaking. And again, this is not where we're getting, you know, the worst of the winds here by any stretch based on velocity. It's, you know, that's a few miles to the south. So this is a serious weather situation here this afternoon. You got to take it very seriously. Again, not necessarily seeing the models being very good agreement on stuff lately. With this pattern, it's a tricky one anyway. I mean, they kept developing stuff all day yesterday, during the day, and nothing was really getting too crazy. We had one morning, had stuff overnight, some flash flood warnings using that energy that was still left over, and then now we just had so much, you know, of an environment that was untapped that things are just going absolutely crazy now with the storm development. So, again, I gotta take this very seriously here. I know this is not even the worst of it, and this could still knock trees down here toward Valdosta proper. So, you know, very nasty weather situation there right now. Again, Valdosta is, you know, in danger, but they're not even getting the worst of it, you know, by a pretty good margin. I mean, it's kind of scary when you think about what we could see down toward the south there around Dasher. You know, they've already been hit so hard by Helene and of course Idalia the area before, and this is the type of wind that, you know, a vulnerable area does not want to get. I mean, it really popped up right there at about 12:53. I mean, this is showing winds to 60, but that's a pretty low height. I mean, and then this said winds at 70 going to Clayaville's way. I wouldn't be surprised if we had winds hurricane force there. You know, 74 miles an hour, maybe even a gust closer to 80 in there, not out of the question based on what we're seeing on this, which is very significant. You know, that's more toward Dasher, more 60 toward Valdosta, which, you know, the velocities are not necessarily even showing as much. I mean, right in there, 55 on the periphery. And we saw it look pretty nasty. So 55 in Valdosta, but maybe, you know, 70 miles an hour there around Dasher. Again, that's what the warning was for, but, you know, doing the correlation with the velocity differences, I mean, I'll kind of back this up again. It doesn't always work that way. A lot of times it doesn't, but, you know, you're seeing 67 on velocity here, and then we had a 55 report. You're seeing like 35 miles an hour on velocity. So you kind of do the correlation upward. You're talking about hurricane force gusts there in an isolated pocket. Definitely not out of the question around the Dash area. Now it's going to be moving into toward areas further off toward the north and east. You know, Howell there in the next little bit. I just got to be very mindful of what's going on. I know we have advisory further over. Just going to have to continue to track the situation very carefully here. There's a lot going on this afternoon. Again, you see, even I know I was watching some rotation up toward Pierce County, Georgia. Let me just check that because never had any type of warning come out on it. But there's some weak rotation there. That's kind of faded, it would seem. We have an advisory down there in toward northeast Florida here as well. We have a downburst signature just south of the airport in Jacksonville. So, got to be mindful of that, obviously. Got to be taking heed of that here as the situation does progress, as the situation does develop. You know, we'll see if that ends up needing a warning right now, not necessarily, but just got to continue to monitor the situation here. Just got to continue to monitor the situation. Trying to keep you up to date. Trying to keep you informed. I'm going to try to switch over back to the Moody radar again. You have this area of wind northeast of Barwick, moving toward Morven there, give or take an I-75. Then you have an area here that's, still pretty nasty looking. They're moving north side of Valdosta. This one here, southeast of Valdosta, we have the really strong wind moving toward Howell and Withers, give or take. As we're looking at things, maybe kind of right in there. I know even SPC now talking about this. I mean, we've had thunderstorm watches. We haven't had this much to develop over the years. They're saying probably not going to get one because this is a more isolated setup, but 20% chance of it. Locally strong wind gusts may occur this afternoon with thunderstorm activity developing east and northeast across the region. A cluster of thunderstorms across southern Georgia has occasionally shown near severe level velocity signatures on radar. So I would, they might talk more about it, but I would say it's been very severe at cases, within that. So, activities occurring within a moderately unstable but weakly sheared environment, and given weak shear, thunderstorms will likely remain somewhat disorganized. However, steep low-level lapse rates and precipitable water values near 2 inches may support water-loaded downdrafts and sporadic strong downburst winds as convection develop east and northeastward through the afternoon, and the overall severe potential is expected to remain limited, and a watch is not anticipated at this time. So what it kind of tells me too is you see all these strong signatures of wind. Well, even if these storms start to fall apart and they haven't produced as much wind as you think they're going to produce, it's going to get pushed down to the ground in some cases and be a problem here for folks, and cause damage there in, a spot or two that could even look tornadic-like if we haven't even had the winds produce, as much with the velocities as what we would think they would with those in real time. When they start to fall apart, you could get a real strong push of wind to the surface that is problematic. So just a cluster of numerous warnings. You don't have necessarily any overwhelming hail signatures. It's just because we have so much wind energy out here. This isn't necessarily the normal look to have this many warnings here. They're all kind of clustered together, and so in some ways, the way they develop so quickly, kind of having to issue these on the fly, but they may be able to start to merge these warnings together as we look ahead, so it's not quite as chaotic here. It's just these developed chaotically, to be quite honest. They didn't have a choice. They had to get these out as quick as they could, the Weather Service in Tallahassee, as we're looking at things. I'm already seeing a number of folks in the dark here, power outage wise. Thomas County, according to Power.us, 916 customers without electricity there. As we're looking at things, Brooks County, 1,162 customers. Berrien County, 699. Lowndes, 1,525. So that's a lot there, according to Power.us. And in Florida, Madison County jumps out at me, 644 customers without electricity. So thanks so much for tuning in, everybody, here on the different platforms. I appreciate everybody watching. And we have a new severe thunderstorm warning just to the west of the area now. With this storm here over southeast Alabama, it just popped up here on the maps. It's for portions of Dale, Geneva, Henry, and Houston counties there until 1 o'clock Central Time. 60-mile-an-hour wind gust, quarter-size hail possibility over in that direction. So watching that situation very carefully. I know further off toward the east, though, we have multiple, and I mean multiple, severe thunderstorm warnings in effect here. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here, in toward the weather center. I know, I'm just trying to keep you guys up to date here on what's going on. We have 5 severe thunderstorm warnings here in effect at this moment. Of course, we're always giving you the latest across our 62 counties. When there's tornado warning storms, we're always on. We've been for a lot of these severe thunderstorm warning situations as well. So just gotta take it very seriously when we have alerts issued. We're on there trying to give you guys the very latest on what's happening. So Again, just trying to keep you up to date. I'm going to see some of these probably jump off the screen, go away at 1:30, but some of these will continue. Some may even get extended. I see that's not even under a warning there. Okay. I know making this a big box for all this probably can't come soon enough. This is a really strong wind signature. That's not in a warning there. Northwest of Valdosta proper. These are just popping up everywhere, very rapidly. And that one kind of moved out of that box and really strengthened there. Moving up toward the Bemis community and the like. But that's some of the strongest wind, not under a warning there. US 41, northwest side of Valdosta. So just making sure there's so many of these. There is an advisory for it, but unfortunately there's not a warning for this. So this could be causing some damage there. Probably is causing some damage there. Just popping up so fast, it's hard for the folks to keep up with these. I mean, these, really, I think they just need to go ahead as quick as they can, get one really big box out, or maybe two big boxes, and then Jackson will have to use some stuff east. Just go ahead and cover all this here. I know it's not ideal, but that way we're not missing, some areas of wind enhancement that pop up so quickly. So just got to be mindful of that here. When we have a squall line, though, I see the big alerts. But this stuff just keeps popping up and moving around, and renegade fast in here to some degree. So just got to be very mindful here. This is some really significant wind here on northwest side of Valdosta, US 41. Right now, this could be causing some pretty nasty damage here, because I'm seeing this at such a low height. This could be 70-mile-an-hour winds here. It is unwarned. It's just the nature of it sometimes. This is a environment that I don't think we were necessarily thought, considering what happened yesterday. Granted, in a way, it makes sense when you had everything kind of built up yesterday, and then it, didn't really come into play. We're talking about the risk level being built up, but today we had everything left over, and now everything's able to take advantage of what didn't happen, and we had even more of the parameters in play for these storms here. So that's kind of storyline with that. Everything kind of built up, and then everything meteorologically came together now. So just makes it very tough, to warn for this stuff. But it's a very clear wind damage signature in parts of Lowndes County. I mean, that may be the most impressive of them all. And then just here, moving off toward the north and east, right toward Moody Air Force Base radar site. Again, really nasty stuff. Augusta 47 further off toward the west a little while ago. Thomasville Airport. Again, continuing to track everything here in the Weather Center. Continuing to give you guys the very latest on what's going on. You see around Berlin there. It's also outside of a warning, but again, stuff just kind of goes on. I mean, maybe you don't really have, you're not going to have extra people there to issue warnings in an environment that, doesn't necessarily seem to be, much different than what we had yesterday, but it ends up being much different here. So, this is your new warning, though. Berrien, Brooks, Colquitt, Cook, Lanier, and Lowndes. So that kind of, I think they kind of realize they just need to go and issue the big warning here now. You see this big box, so that way we're not missing things here. That way we're not missing things here. This goes to 215, Cook, Berrien, Lanier, Lowndes, Northern Brooks, Eastern Colquitt at 129. Severe thunderstorms are looking at along a line extending from 9 miles southeast of Moultrie to 9 miles east of the Pavo community. Pavo, as we're looking there, to near Valdosta, the 6 miles southwest of Mayday community there, moving northeast at 45 miles an hour. So just continuing to track that. Continue to monitor everything here. Nashville, Moultrie, Adel, Valdosta, Lakeland, Iris, Sparks, Enigma, Ray City, Norman Park, Lenox, Alapaha. There, as we continue, I-75 at Exon 16, Moody Air Force Base, Riverside, Sly, Rimerton, Meigs, Dasher, and Morven. So you can see there west of Howe, watching that area on velocity. That's one of them, but there's multiple. This area here, does have a warning now moving up toward the Bemis community. This area on Berlin really, taking on some strengthening here. It's also now warned. Talking about 60+ mile an hour winds. Even some weak rotation, I would say, with that. It's not really tight, but the way that angle's coming together on the view needs to be monitored. I know the time right now is 1:32 on this Monday, June 9th, 2025. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center, trying to keep everybody safe and informed on what's going on here. Trying to keep everybody safe and informed. Just looking at all the different data and the different data points. So we currently have 4 local warnings here. We have 4 local warnings. We have one more just west of the air that could move into the air next little bit, the one in southeast Alabama. As the situation does transpire. Again, giving you the latest here. Okay, I know one of these warnings they canceled Grady and Thomas, but they're continuing Brooks and Colquitt. Kind of back things up, go forward a little. So no further bad toward the west, things are improving there. Out toward the west here. Still one still including parts of Thomas, but now granted we do have to watch some of this from the west. I really hope it may not happen this way. I'm really hoping at least that some of this stuff will weaken as it moves further east. But it may not happen. I mean, there's still to be enough instability really to keep this stuff pretty strong at least, but maybe the atmosphere will eventually be tapped a little bit as we get further over with all this. I mean, I don't know. I'm looking at instability numbers. They say that's probably not the case. They say that this atmosphere is probably pretty volatile still, and this could get really rough here still, for areas that maybe weren't hit as hard. And toward southwestern Georgia here, as we look at things, you see they weren't hit too hard so far. The atmosphere is more on tap where this area from Dothan's headed. Of course, to the north, I was posting about it this morning. A lot of the heaviest rain was in more rural areas, so we didn't cut in. But, that plays a factor in flash flooding and making it not quite as bad generally. And that stuff can drain better there, as you don't have as much concrete. But between Oakfield and Doles, we had 5+ inches of rain there this morning in our northern areas. And you see north of Leesburg quite a bit. Oranges, indicate at least 4, but then the yellowish oranges indicate at least 5. And this sometimes underestimates things. So probably some backyard getting a 1/2 foot of rain there this morning, which is significant. I mean, as I, see with that up, I mean, most of the areas here didn't get too much locally anyway. We got 5/100s here today, but that's nothing really, East Star compared to that, what they had in Georgia. But every little bit does help, and they're out concerned. But I know out in the Western Florida Panhandle radar was still, and it's not sun as much now because it's getting past the 12-hour benchmark. But At one point, some of the estimates were over 10 inches there in the western Florida panhandle. So it's just hit and miss with some really volatile, type of weather and those very heavy downpours leading to high rainfall totals. So again, continuing to give you guys the latest. I see Jacksonville, Augusta 40 there on the weather stem station. Getting some strong storm development here at the East Coast now. We'll watch that and see if that ends up getting a warning next little bit. There's a marine warning, but I doubt they're going to actually see a severe thunderstorm warning on that. Since it's so close to the coast, I don't see enough with it at this point to justify that. As we go ahead and keep moving the maps around. See that wind north of Valdosta there? That's noteworthy. Again, trying to give you the latest here. This is wind velocity mode on the Doppler radar. It indicates, the wind potential and the stronger winds are noted here in these brighter greens and sometimes brighter reds as well. But right now we're looking more about brighter greens because of where this is within the Doppler view. But see around Howell there. I'm surprised Jacksonville hadn't issued anything yet on this, to be quite honest. They've issued advisories, but I mean a warning. The service in Jacksonville is responsible for Echols County, if you're wondering what I mean by that. With this being so close to the radar, I know the numbers, they're not maybe quite 60, but it's so close to the radar, I would think it's probably producing. I know they updated the warning, the big warning, I guess it would be, or is this a different one? Okay, it's a different one. I got to see they're trying to get this stuff out as quick as they can. This is a lot going on, but at 1:36, the severe thunderstorm located near Mayday or 10 miles northwest of Staytonville, moving northeast at 25 miles an hour, 70 mile an hour wind gusts by Valdosta. I-75 at exit 16. Moody Air Force Base, Dasher, Naylor, I-75 at exit 11, and Valdosta Airport. Oh, with the 70 mile an hour wind gust potential. Considerable damage possible. Expect, big problems here with some tree damage, and damage could even occur to mobile homes, roofs, and outbuildings with this type of wind. So really got to take this seriously here this afternoon. I would say the model guidance, and I may still at some point in here, but it has really been not handling things well lately. So, I'd expect more of this to be about South Georgia today, though, compared to as we look, ahead, and eventually some of this will push more down to the south. But the models have had trouble. I mean, they were really popping stuff up yesterday. It didn't really happen, most of the day there with the development today. It's just gone crazy here in north south central Georgia with just a slew of warnings. You see there on Berlin, 65 mile an hour winds, a possibility there. And quite honestly, let me go to a different view because our latest scan here, has it just come in? Nope, it hadn't. It's 10 minutes behind. I hope the radar's still working there. I mean, it's right around that radar set. I hope it didn't knock it offline. Let me check a different source here. I have another radar source I can pull in just in case it's on my end, but the weather being by that site, I've had problems with that site lately. It may be down. Still says it's up, but I haven't had a data scan in 10 minutes, so gotta wonder. That bad weather's right there at it. We'll just go to the Tallahassee radar then for now. It's still showing it. Ooh, Adel. You need to be inside and away from windows there on Adel immediately. Having to look higher up now, but this is a more recent data here than more recent data scan. So let's get a camera up rolling 8 out there in Cook County. That could be wind to 70 miles an hour. I know the colors are different because they're looking kind of different direction, but when it's brighter reds, it's yellow, and that is, indicative of the same type of wind potential, just a different direction from the radar angle. Well, as we're looking at things, do we have any cameras on ADI? I hope we do. We're going to try to look. Okay, so let's go into Georgia cameras. I was on the Florida cameras there. That's why they wasn't popping up for a second. Let's go to Georgia cameras. Well, this is going to be hard to see. It's really hard to see, and this is indicative of how bad things are on ADI right now. So reduced visibility here. Not good. I'll see if there's another angle that at least can show something a little bit clearer than that, but let's go right into ADL here proper. That wind seems to be whipping there. Yikes. It may still get worse. This is right into Ward ADL here. Live look on the Georgia 511 GDOT traffic cam perspective there. So a lot of folks on the roads here, and this is not ideal conditions at all to be driving in here as you're tracking things, as you're monitoring things. I mean, that camera is moving because of the wind here, folks. Again, this is an ADL, Georgia, Cook County there. Some very nasty weather conditions. We're going to see just a little bit further up there on I-75. See some folks, there's one vehicle pulled to the side here in these conditions, it would seem. Again, a very dangerous weather situation here. And the Moody side is closer, but it was having some issues. I'll check it here in a moment. I'm going to go ahead and check now to see if, nope, I think it's down because I haven't got a scan on it since 128. So let's go back to the Tallahassee radar here on ADL. They're getting absolutely hammered. This is going to knock a lot of trees down around ADL here. This could even have some small hail in it. As we're looking at the different scans here, come out pretty rapidly from the Tallahassee view. I mean, we're seeing 75 mile-an-hour winds at this height. Most of that's probably translating down to the surface here. Maybe not all of it, but a lot of it. It's a real problem there in Cook County, south side of ADL, especially getting hit very hard, I suspect, as we look at things. And this is, moving into Ward Berrien County here the next little bit. Again, these are some of the stronger afternoon type of storms, and it's not completely because of that, but some of the stronger storms you'll see, as we're looking at this time of year. So again, a nasty weather situation. Nasty weather situation here. I'm going to go ahead and keep looking here at some more data points. I know some of the model guidance, and it's not showing as much now, but it is showing a line of storms come through late in the night tonight. I know I have some other current stuff up, but it says like 5 a.m. This is kind of what we're thinking could happen, but it's weaker now. It was some more of a squall line coming on through at that point in time as we were looking at things, as we were tracking things. Still showing some organization with it though. That's there at about 5 a.m. on that Tuesday. But the atmosphere may be a little more tapped, now because of what we're seeing this afternoon developing, a little bit more so than maybe what we would expected. But yesterday underwhelmed, today overwhelmed, and it's overwhelming, in terms of the overall severity of some of these storms. I know right now, because of the way they did this and merged everything together, kind of what I was thinking probably would be the best thing to do. We're down to one severe thunderstorm warning right now, but it's a very big one geographically. So that's an area. We have this area out toward the west. Let's see if it's still looking. Well, it's kind of falling off some on the Fort Rucker / Fort Novasville view. Some more stuff further west, but let's see here. Yeah, Moody is not sending anything out. It looks like it's delayed, it says. And in Jasper, I see winds at 40, 50. But you see all these winds. This is the area here. Even here, we see winds at 50 moving toward Homerville, but east of Adel, 60, 70 mile an hour winds. That'd be keeping warnings going here. That's very serious. Could have eventually move up toward the Pearson area, give or take, in toward Atkinson County, but having a radar knocked offline, I know, it could be because of the wind being so bad in there. That's definitely possible, and that'd be a big deal. That would indicate how volatile these storms are, but it also could be because that radar's had some trouble lately, and, something just went wrong in there, and also could just be a lightning strike in there too, which is still very problematic, but we'll see how quick that radar comes back up. I hope it's quick, but we'll find out. So again, continuing to track things here in the Weather Center. There's an airport weather warning toward Jacksonville and Maiden. Let me see what they're saying with that. Let me see what they're saying. Okay, they've canceled it. So gusty winds have moved off to the east of the airfield there. Again, Moody radar is offline now because, of some type of the weather conditions coming on in. Whether it's directly or indirectly because of the weather, not really sure, because that radar had problems lately. They had been fixing stuff on it. It had been on though, but not anymore. So they look at some of the parallel numbers. This really tells a story, and this is why we really had to go into wall to wall here pretty rapidly. This isn't like what we had in Tallahassee last May, don't get me wrong, but this is very impressive, the way it developed here. Let me go ahead and show you on the Parrot.us source. You see the 18,000 side in the state, and it's all clustered in south central Georgia here. As I move this up even more, I'm just on the Parrot.us site if you're wondering where I am. So there's a color table. You can see the percentages by counties. And then we'll go ahead and say here, Thomas County, about 559 customers in the dark. Colquitt County over 1,400. Cook County over 1,000. Berrien County almost 2,000. Lowndes County over 5,000. That's getting toward Moody Air Force Base area, give or take. Brooks County, 1,500. So telling that weather story here this afternoon for sure. There's quite a few folks in the dark there as we're looking. And this type of pattern, you don't always see that many outages. It tells me we've had quite a few trees, trees just to completely fall. Tree limbs, they're falling as well. So not a good situation at all here. Not good. As we continue to track, continue to monitor here. You see in parts of Cook County, 60, 70 mile an hour winds moving into Berrien County. I'm sure some power lines, whether it's because of the trees, they're getting knocked down. Again, still with you here in the Weather Center this afternoon. It's 1:51 p.m. Strong storms, Hamilton County moving up toward Eccles there. See some of these yellowish areas that pop up. That could indicate winds there, 40, 50. Had a gust of 47 at Moody. Okay, I wonder if that's, that's not right where the radar is, though. That's the thing. The radar site with that's down here, so it could have been, worse there, possibly. As we're continuing to look, continuing to track, I see they brought the warning text down to 60 miles an hour now with this versus 70. We're looking so high up, though it's hard to say really, but that's in Marion County. And moving toward Atkinson as we look ahead. This pocket of wind set up west of Homerville. And the Moody radar is still offline. When it went offline, he had some that's moving up that way. Could have been lighting, could have been something else, could have been just an issue that unfortunately, rearose, or could have been just the winds were so strong causing some damage. Hard to say. As we keep looking and keep tracking things here. Just to 41, Jacksonville Airport earlier on, by the way. Not severe necessarily there, but I bet it's it's interesting because on reflectivity it doesn't look like, anything crazy, but the velocities are just, at points here we've been watching, they've looked off the charts. I mean, we're looking further up, obviously, on this radar from Tallahassee, but these velocities still look pretty much off the charts here. Southeast Adel, south of Nashville here, these winds. So I'm very strong this afternoon. Again, a very dangerous weather situation, obviously. Again, some backyards could have seen hurricane force gust here. I think that's a distinct possibility. As we continue to give you guys the very latest here. Again, some very dangerous weather here this afternoon. Some serious stuff. Trying to stay on top of it the best we can to keep you guys informed. Thank you so much for tuning in, or whether it's on Facebook, KC Cloud Reacts, Facebook Cloud Weather, Twitter at Cloud KC. You have YouTube at Cloud Weather, Twitch Cloud Weather. We're trying to be on top of things here for you. I know. Got another mesoscale discussion. This is for further off toward the west. We're still keeping that one severe thunderstorm warning in play. In southeast Alabama right now, we have a 40% chance of a watch in that region. Isolated to scattered thunderstorms may produce occasional strong gusts to small hail through the afternoons. Again, trying to give you guys the very latest here on these inclement conditions. Just trying to stay on top of everything. Just checking all the different sources here, obviously. Just trying to make sure we're keeping you guys safe. as we continue to give you the latest. Been with you here for this whole hour here pretty much. It's just after 1 o'clock. Trying to keep you guys informed. Look at the temperature. You see how much cooler it is in some of the areas that have been hit by the storms. Thomas got 70. Moultrie 72. Let's look at some of the rainfall, but some areas in between a lot warmer. And I hear East of Starkwood 89 degrees. We did have some rain earlier on, not too significant, but got a little bit. I know as we keep looking, keep tracking, keep monitoring, there's a risk. I mean, the risk in the yellow is where we're supposed to see the focus. You see how far north that goes. But on the periphery is where we've seen this development here, which can sometimes be the case. Yeah, 12-hour rainfall. I mean, look at all that rain they had up there. North of Albany last night. I mean, remember the half foot of rain. A lot of them are rural areas, but still. Those, yellow to orange is a half foot of rain pretty much, according to radar estimates, which, that is very significant. Again, continuing to give you guys the very latest on exactly what's going on here at about 1:58 on your Monday, your June 9th, 2025. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center. These storms, even though I haven't seen the reports necessarily really streaming in yet, from the power outage numbers, I can tell you these storms have a history of producing wind damage. So, how that many power outages, it doesn't take, really take too much to realize that these storms are definitely, producing damage here. And, they're problematic situations. So we just gotta continue to track things. Just gotta continue to give you guys the very latest on what is going on. You see south of Nashville around Race City. We're still seeing the potential for 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts with all this. So again, just gotta continue to get the latest updates in on exactly what is happening. So. And that radar is down at Moody. This is the last scan about 30 minutes ago. Unfortunate to see that down. As we see off the Fort Rucker/Fort Novasil radar here. Watching this severe warm storm, winds to about 40 sign up on it. I don't know if they'll extend the warning into Georgia or not. Gotta watch some of the other areas here as well, though. We have that cooler pocket of air, even if the instability numbers look high. That could play a role in reducing the intensity on some of these as we look further east. So we'll just continue to track everything here in toward the Weather Center as the situation does transpire. So we're just trying to keep you guys up to date here as things develop. Just trying to stay on top of it all. We're at 2 o'clock on this Monday. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center. We are seemingly getting development out ahead on this. I'll back this up some. We're seeing some of this get out ahead of this, which I gotta wonder if that's going to reduce some of this damaging potential back out here. But it might start to promote it somewhat to leading edge. By the way, a special weather statement out in here. So I see a warning one away in southeast Alabama, but a special weather statement for some of that further off toward the east now. 50-mile-an-hour gust possible through about 2:45. As we move to the other radar view. And then as we go ahead and look at things See parts of Berrien County. It still could be 60-mile-an-hour wind here southeast of Nashville. You know, I'm not as confident because of what we're seeing develop out ahead and because of the radar view having to be pretty far away, but it's still possible. Let's go all the way up to the Robbins radar. It may not be all that helpful here, but you know, it's not so near much with that. I gotta wonder if this is, you know, starting to weaken a little bit more than what velocities are showing because of all that development out ahead. Jackson radar also not showing it as much now. Warning set to expire at 2:15. I don't think they would necessarily drop it early, but if the trends continue, we may not get another warning here past 2:15. We shall see, but it's hard to say. I mean, it's possible. We're not used to having to look from the distant radars up here because we have the one radar close by. It's possible, you know, different angles here that, you know, some are kind of showing and some aren't. If we had that one, we would kind of know it was probably getting down to the ground, but it's possible we're not getting the wind to the ground as much anymore. As we're looking, by the way, they had a gust of 43 at Jacksonville Airport at 122. They corrected the number they had in there earlier on, but it wasn't severe. We had some different advisory type information coming out of their airport, weather warning and like. You see this wind potential. Yeah, this looks like it's dropping. I'm still seeing a gust of 60 in here possible, though, north of Lakeland, but I have a feeling that these winds aren't producing as much anymore, which would be a good thing. Doesn't mean we couldn't get more development out through the day. Even in southeast Georgia, on the leading edge here, it's not oriented as, you know, well in some ways, but definitely could end up getting some more development on that. But, you know, we just have to continue to track, continue to monitor here. Continue to give you guys the very latest. A little bit of wind enhancement there west of Live Oak. I know I went to the high res view when I switched radars. I want to make sure it wasn't just my data feed. It wasn't working on the Moody site, so that's why it looks a little more high res. But so I switch between them sometimes on here because of, you know, the timing of when the feed comes out. But Lanier County there north of Lakeland. Just watching some of this. See back, you know, getting a little bit of, that's not anything, but you saw some interference per se. As we're looking there. So again, trying to keep you up to date. Again, thanks so much for tuning in and trusting me here on this Monday afternoon. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button here yet on YouTube, if you're watching over there, go ahead and do that. As we're trying to give you guys just, you know, the very latest on that platform, all the other platforms as well. Obviously, it's all about protecting you, your friends, your family. I know on YouTube you can kind of back up even on the stream and see what you missed here. So I know that's really helpful in these type of situations. You know, see what I was talking about a few minutes ago, especially when we're doing like half-hour updates, something like that. That can be really helpful for sure. Because that's the one that has the DVR functionality, so the others don't. So you know, when we're watching in real time is what I mean by that. You know, of course, after the fact, you can go back. But sometimes we're on for hours and hours, and that's why that's helpful there. YouTube.com there /@cloudsweather. Again, still with you right now. 205. I'm gonna check some power outage numbers because these storms, you know, had really definitely been packing a punch. I have a feeling that these are becoming more dominant out ahead, which are weakening behind, even if the velocity is still showing pretty high. It probably isn't necessarily coming to fruition there at the surface as much, but we'll see what the surface, you know, determines here as we look ahead. 19,013 customers in the dark now in the state of Georgia, according to Powder.us. You know, there's quite a few of those here. You know, most of those in our covered areas. So. Almost 4,000 customers in the dark in Berrien County there. About a third of the county. That's where we're still getting this storminess, so. Not ideal. Lanier still looks pretty bad on here. In terms of outages in Lanier County. Well, they were showing 0, but I'm sure it's going to go up a little there. Cook County over 1,000 customers in the dark. Lowndes County almost 6,000. Brooks about 1,500. Thomas almost 1,000. Colquitt there almost 400. So a lot of folks without electricity this afternoon. So we continue to give you the latest. You see all this development out ahead. I mean, let me check the winds on that in the Jacksonville site. Because you got to watch out to see if some of these become a little bit more, you know, prevalent as we look ahead. Not necessarily seeing it yet, but doesn't mean it couldn't happen. Ultimately, we're just kind of looking higher up. You know, that looks like more just a heavy downpours, which, you know, we, you know, like that more than severe weather, obviously. Some areas could use the rain. I mean, not everybody, but a lot of folks could use it. And we have a storm here. It looks like trying to pop real quick west of Tallahassee. We'll have to watch that. But have to watch some of this stuff there in southwest Georgia as well. And of course, we'll pop back on as needed for warnings. But sometimes, you know, if it's not overwhelming, we'll, you know, and if it's not a tornado warning, you know, and not overwhelming. I mean, some of these thunderstorm warnings were starting to get overwhelming. That's why they popped in. But if we don't have to be on Facebook, Casey Cloud Reacts, Cloud Weather will post a warning information there. And also on Twitter/X there, X platform at Cloud Casey. If we're not doing a live stream, because I'm anticipating this warning to go away here at 2:15, and then it'll probably wrap unless I see something really pop back up. But you know, with the history and all this, I wanted to stay with it, with the radar coverage not being as good with it. You know, the angles being further away. I wanted to make sure I stay on top of the situation here the best I can, as we're tracking things, as we're monitoring things here in toward the weather center. So. Again, continuing to watch things. There's some wind in there, Lanier County. You know, you just got to pay attention to that. Got to pay attention to that there. Looks like some enhancement in Pierce County. Coming out of Bacon County. Nothing overwhelming there, but we'll watch it. Let me take off the wind numbers and put on the temperature numbers. Because this area is really stabilized back out in here, I would think. I know there's still some instability that was showing up, but that may not be updated really. You know, but some of these areas out here are not as stable. We'll have to watch it. There's not as much maybe of a trigger for development as you get further south in our area. But as we get further north here, you know, we'll just have to see. You know, sometimes if you have this kind of remnant area, it can re-strengthen, or it could just kind of dampen things and not really be as big of a factor super weather-wise. Let me check our lightning. You know, if I had to kind of guess here, the models I'm not wanting to rely on too much. They've been having issues here lately. You know, the instability, it kind of makes me think that, you know, maybe it isn't severe for a while, but eventually the leading edge becomes severe, maybe as we get close to the coast or something, if we don't get development out ahead. That's kind of my guess here. We'll look at what the models are trying to show, but Yeah, let me go to the most recent run here. And, okay, that's what it's supposed to look like at 2 o'clock. I mean, it could be worse in terms of being off, but it's off by a pretty good distance here. I've seen it do worse, but 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, according to this, but it may be wrong. It's not going to never be, exactly right, but it could be way wrong, is what I mean. As you have some of the current polygons up, the lightning, but this is and the current taps, but the models, overlaid on there. You see maybe more development, but then it's kind of clear for a while. According to this, I don't know if it's going to happen, but and it shows here 11 midnight as we get 1 a.m. Maybe some stuff coming in from the west that could be severe before it falls off. We'll see. Yesterday, model kept us over and over. Guidance trying to say storms, really being nasty like we had for that stretch here this afternoon, and it never really were like that. We had one warning, we had the flooding in the night though because everything had been built up, and then then we had all the storm acts and develop in the lingering environment. But now we've seen some, cooling obviously, in some areas of the region with temperature down to about 70, but an odd setup to say the least here. I mean, there's more development in Florida than what the model was showing. So we look at some of the other parameters. You see supercell composite higher to the north and the like there, but we'll have to watch some of this stuff down here, but not sure if it's going to have enough forcing or not. I know, I haven't checked, but I think as the last check, there's supposed to be a manned rocket launch tomorrow morning there on Cape Canaveral. Hope the weather holds out for that. As we keep looking at the Doppler perspective here. Advisory for Jefferson and Taylor counties and Lafayette, Madison. Winds to 40 through 315. That's a possibility. Again, giving you guys the very latest here. Quite a bit of lightning there. Southwest Georgia. We'll have to see how that evolves. I know advisories in play toward Atkinson. Quite a bit of lightning there. Whenever thunder roars go indoor, just moving toward Waycross. Even if it's not severe, it doesn't become severe imminently. We could still have some pretty nasty weather heading to Waycross area here next little bit. Waycross there, Blackshear. I know Berrien County advisory for 50-mile-an-hour winds now through 2:30. So that's probably what they're going to do here. Is just have an advisory for that. And yeah, you see the warning go away. So that's the story now. No more warnings for now. Doesn't mean it's going to stay that way by any stretch. We have to remain on guard, obviously. But they're moving toward Waycross, maybe trying to get a little bit stronger. We'll watch that. Whenever thunder roars, you want to go indoors, obviously. But they're expiring a warning for now. Just see if that strengthens as it gets into Waycross. We're pretty far away on the radars. So. New advisory, by the way, now. Let me go ahead and switch some things over. New advisory until 2:45, 45 to 55-mile-an-hour gust and half-inch hail. Homerville, Fargo, Waycross, Stephen Foster State Park. So we'll watch that one area especially. So far, wind radar, I don't see a whole bunch of wind with it, but maybe a little bit of hail. I mean, half-inch hail is what they're saying. And That could be possible. Those scans there, I mean, that might get closer to 3/4. The warning criteria used to be 3/4. And if it was the case, I would say maybe they need a warning, but it's an inch. It's been an inch for a while. So that cuts down on a few unnecessary warnings here and there. But once you get to an inch, that can cause a little damage. And it's possible they could be seeing that approach. Well, there are algorithms now saying that. So interesting. I don't know if that's just a one-off. I'm going to look further up on the radars. But south of Millwood there, moving kind of east. Let me make sure how this is. Yeah, maybe north side away across from the airport, north, give or take. Let me check the view. I mean, environment hadn't really been showing hail. It had been more about the wind as they've been looking. Not much wind on that. I mean, there may be more than what it shows based on the distance, but hail could be overdoing it based on the height here. If we had the Moody radar, it'd be really helpful. Unfortunately, went offline during all this. By the way, there was a gust to 60 there in the Sparks area at 1:45. Cook County information there. University of Georgia Mesonet site at Sparks. We were showing you some of those traffic cameras from the area about that time. Pretty nasty. Yeah, there's been quite a few different reports. They had to put them in a report here, it looks like. There's so many different reports. As I look here, Cook County at 60 gusts. We had a gust of 53 miles an hour in Lanier County around Lakeland at 1:40 p.m. 47 mile an hour gust at 1:35 there in Moody Air Force Base. So that tells the story. 47 miles an hour, Thomasville Airport at 1:15. 44 there, Brooks County at 1:16. So we've had a lot of reports here this afternoon for sure. Some of those severe though, is like, when you get to 60 and then some areas you don't have the reports from yet, maybe some damage. We'll have to kind of assess. Ooh, that looks like it's popping up very quickly toward Tallahassee. I may get a warning pretty soon for Tallahassee. That popped up very quickly in 1 or 2 scans. That's how some of the stuff in Georgia was doing earlier on. We had 10 minutes ago we had nothing with that, and all of a sudden now we're getting, looks like it begins with downburst signature pretty much. Moving toward Tallahassee proper. Yeah, I want to wrap this, but you may not be able to, quite honestly, because of what we're seeing on the Doppler scans. That's weakening a little bit around Millwood, that hail signature. I'm not as convinced about that, honestly, as I am about this thing around Tallahassee. I don't, in that environment, I don't love that popping up and that extreme instability. This could kind of catch folks off guard and become warned very rapidly. There's an advisor for 50 winds on this through 3 o'clock, but only thing I will say about this is we'll watch it because there's a chance they could also, next scan, it could start to downtrend again. Excuse me, as we continue to look here, this could start to downtrend. It's not out of the question. I've seen it happen before when you think, something's really getting up there and escalating, but the Southwest and North Fleet. We'll get a new scan in here pretty soon. These get, brighter, that's concerning. If these don't get, brighter, they stay the same or they start to fall off, then that's a little bit better news. But they said it right in Tallahassee, that's a cause for concern. A little bit of wind there in Quincy area, but not overwhelming there. Some wind enhancement in Taylor County, we'll watch that. Have to watch the area up there. Obviously, I was pinpointing that's moving up maybe just north of Waycross proper. Right there in northwestern Ware County. New scan just came out. Well, that didn't really uptrend, which is good. I still don't think it's impossible to get a burst of, we could get a burst of wind out of this though. I mean, we had, let's see here on the pixels, 52 on the scan before, 54 now, so a little bit of strengthening. If it wasn't headed right toward Tallahassee and right toward the airport, I would kind of probably let this go, but that's pretty low down to see that type of signature. You know, headed right into the population there. Real quick while we're on, let me go ahead and see some other things. We'll see in Ohio real quick. There's a couple warnings there. Don't get that every day up that way. Some severe thunderstorm warnings. 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts, quarter-size hail with one of these. 60 winds on the other. I just hate to let this go and then we get a warning real quick. If it was a warning that wasn't in that area like that, I might go ahead and just, you know, say we'll post it. And we could still go to that, you know, direction, go in that direction, but with the population being involved, I just hate to wrap, and then also, you know, maybe in a spot where if you jump back, if it really strengthens much more. So watching southwest and northly, this is right, whether it's severe or not. The 50-mile-an-hour winds, you would think, headed towards State Road 263, toward Lake Bradford Road, towards State Road 363. You know, you see, you know, areas around FAMU, FSU, potentially being impacted. Let's look at the topography here. We'll put lightning on here. Okay, not for this storm, but we got a warning further north now. Okay. Baker, Calhoun, Early, and Miller. Let's see what's going on with this. Honestly, not overwhelmed by that. Maybe a little bit of a burst of wind possible out of this. Don't necessarily think if the signature stays like this and the population that's involved with this, I don't think we'd stick with this one if we don't get one toward Tallahassee. But let me read you the information. You know, as we're on now live, you guys may be wanting to, you know, figure out what's going on up there, obviously, in our viewing area. So this goes until 3 o'clock. A 223 severe thunderstorm is located 8 miles south of Blakely, moving east at 30 miles an hour. 60-mile-an-hour wind gust and penny-sized hail possibility. We're talking about northern Miller, northwestern Baker, south central Calhoun, and central Early counties in Georgia involved with this. They're southwest Georgia, and they're not Baker County in Florida, but Baker County in Georgia. Douglasville, Centerville, Damascus, Ivy's Mill, Crestview, Cuba community there in South Georgia, Harmony Church Road / Highway 45, Old Damascus, Jeterville, Bethany, Hintown, Hilton. You kind of get the idea. Hail, damaging wind, and continuous clouded ground lightning occurring with this storm. So move indoors immediately. I mean, highest on the winds I'm seeing are maybe, let's see, 47 miles an hour, but that's right there going from Early into Miller counties. So we'll watch it, obviously. Some of the action we were watching in Alabama. It looks a little weaker heading into Tallahassee. That's good. Still got to be careful. Still could be dangerous right in the metro, but strong thunderstorm action. Columbia, Baker, and Florida. At 3 o'clock. Watching some of this here. Some of this down here. That's where our newest advisory is coming from. Ooh, that's starting to strengthen there. Uh-oh, we may start getting some warnings further east here. Just north of the I-10 corridor. I know I'm going to look a little bit different angle because of the one radar being down, but 50 plus mile an hour winds there in the northern part of Columbia. Hamilton, you see some of those winds. I'm seeing pixels here about 50 miles an hour, 55 miles an hour. This is showing 50 now, moving toward Northfleet. Doing a scan instead of riding to Tallahassee, so that may end up getting a warning. We shall see. Again, thanks so much for everybody tuning in. You know, whether it's on YouTube there, Facebook, Twitter/X, Twitch. Elisa, Topcat, and Larry, they're all watching. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Thanks so much for trusting me. And when we were watching South Jordan, that's what we jumped in for over an hour ago. It was really volatile up there in north, south, central Georgia. A lot of folks being impacted. You know, we're talking about, you know, multiple thousand, you know, in terms of the number, multiple thousands without electricity up there in north, south, central Georgia, clustered in around Valdosta, give or take. Stuff's weakened as it's moved east, but, you know, gotta watch other areas now. Still watch that area some too, but that moved on through. I'm not really seeing it with this severe warning, to be quite honest. Maybe there's a burst of wind, though. That's what maybe they're thinking. Moving toward Damascus, there's some wind potential that area. Here in Tallahassee, we're on Northfleet. Seeing winds about 50 miles an hour, moving right up there into Ward. State Road 366's area there, and US 90. The sun was about 55 miles an hour there. Eastern Hamilton, moving to northern Columbia. Some of those areas, you know, if we get a warning, I can cut back in, you know, of course, and or post about it, but, you know, it still takes a few minutes to do either. That's just what I'm a little worried about here with this. I'd hate, you know, to jump off and then we have to jump right back in for Tallahassee. It still might end up working out that way, unfortunately, you know, but because I feel like they'd have already issued a warning they were going to issue one unless they start getting reports. I mean, I see 50, 55 on some of this, but not really 60, but we're so close on the radar. It still could happen, you know, possibly in here. Strong winds around Perry. Possibility anyway. I don't see a whole bunch in velocity, but not really close to severe on that. Let me check some of our other radar views. Try to get an unobstructed view. Got some wind enhancement there in northwestern parts of Pierce County. Rasan, Blackshear. Again, still with you here. Been on for about an hour and a half. At least, you know, gust of 40, maybe 50 coming into Tallahassee, even if they're not 60. The next half hour. So be inside, be away from windows. Whenever thunder roars, you want to go indoors. I'm putting the lightning tracker up. All our different ones up. Storm northeast of Bainbridge, some lightning with it. It's an early county there. Quite a bit of lightning here. Some lightning right there off the east coast of Jacksonville. This warning goes into 3 o'clock for portions of Baker, Calhoun, Early, and Miller in Georgia. Of course, we cover Baker in Florida and Georgia. Baker in Florida, an advisory, but Baker in Georgia, a warning. And then we'll see a coverage map here. Remind you of that. Baker, you see that right there. North of Bradford, where I'm at. You know, that's highlighted in yellow because that's where I'm at. And then you have Baker in Georgia there, southwest of Dougherty County. That's where we have our warning right now. I know you can always get that map there on clutter.com/live, but watching some wind enhancement up there. Watching some wind there move toward Tallahassee. Very well could get more warnings, but I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it for right now. I mean, some of this stuff here, Northern Columbia, Northern Baker, not that far off of severe, but it's in a pretty rural area. But as it gets to where like Nassau here, we may have to, you know, watch for an uptick. It's just maybe just under severe right now. We have the one warning, but I don't see enough really to justify me sticking with that based on just the overall look on it and the parameters, you know, in terms of the population. I mean, you know, don't like to use that terminology generally, but when we have severe thunderstorm warnings, I mean, it's not, you know, don't want to stick on every single one of them in our area here. We can jump back in, obviously, when we need to through the day as and if it's warranted, you know, as we continue to watch things. But I just don't see a whole bunch with that there, but that didn't mean there couldn't be a burst of wind in a small area that causes some damage. It's definitely possible as we look at things here. Definitely not out of the question, but we'll give you the heads up on that. Baker, Calhoun, Early, Miller till 3 o'clock. Severe thunderstorm warning. We have, you know, also some strong storms that are just under severe limits there toward like Tallahassee, toward like Baker County in Florida, Northern Columbia County in Florida. Into that zone, and we very well could have more warnings here that I'll have to jump in for later on in the day, or maybe even as later tonight. We shall see. Stay tuned, everybody. Stay safe. Whenever thunder roars, please go indoors because lightning can be very dangerous, and in some cases it is even deadly. So stay safe.